The view is incredible. That's the problem. You moved here because someone told you this was where the future gets built. And technically, they were right. You just didn't ask which future, or whose, or what it would cost to stand close enough to watch. Every morning starts the same way. You wake up in a SoMa apartment that costs more than your parents' first mortgage, walk to a window that frames the whole glittering promise, and look down. Somewhere below that view, a man is waking up too. On the concrete, under a tarp, 40 feet beneath a company valued at nearly $1 trillion. You are both San Franciscans. You are both starting your day. One of you has stock options. This is the part nobody warns you about. It isn't that the wealth and the collapse exist in the same city. It's that they exist on the same block. The gap here isn't a statistic you read about. It's a thing you step over on your way to get oat milk. You tell yourself you'll get used to it. And the horrifying thing is, you will. That's not a character flaw. That's the local dialect. Downstairs, the other economy. Now walk out your door. This is where the video everyone films on their phone actually happens. Your building spills you onto a sidewalk that runs, within a few blocks, into the Tenderloin and 6th Street. The parts of the map the relocation brochure quietly cropped. And here's the detail that will rewire your brain. The epicenter of the drug crisis and the epicenter of the AI boom are, in places, the same neighborhood. SoMa. The engineers walk to their trillion-dollar offices past people the same city is failing to keep alive. The wealth and the wreckage share a bus stop. The numbers are grim in a way that has, perversely, been called good news. 621 people died of accidental overdose in the city last year. That's the improved figure, down more than 20% from the peak of over 800, the lowest in 5 years, and roughly 3/4 of those deaths still trace back to fentanyl. Over the last decade, the drug has killed more than 3,000 people in this one city. The mayor stands at press conferences and talks about progress, and he isn't lying exactly. It's just that progress here means the number of your neighbors who died this year is smaller than the number who died the year before. That's the bar. That's a win. You will learn to hold two facts at once because the city demands it. On one hand, violent crime dropped sharply. Homicides hit a low the city hadn't seen in 70 years, and things are, by the data, getting better. On the other hand, you still see a person folded over at the waist, frozen in the posture everyone here recognizes on sight, at 8 in the morning, while a driver in a branded electric SUV waits for the light. Both are true. That's the thing about this city that breaks visitors. They want it to be a paradise or a hellscape, and it refuses to be either. It's a paradise built directly on top of a hellscape, and the elevator between them is broken, and everyone's just stepping around the shaft. The rent is a form of weather. You don't negotiate rent in San Francisco. You survive it, the way you survive fog, by accepting that it was here before you and will outlast you. The median one-bedroom crossed $4,000 a month, not a luxury one-bedroom, the median. The middle of the road is a road most of the country couldn't afford to merge onto. Rents here climbed faster than anywhere else in America last year, up more than 20% while the rest of the country stayed flat. And in your neighborhood, SoMa, the neighborhood the AI companies claimed as their campus, rents jumped around 42%. That's not a housing market. That's a bidding war you got drafted into without a paddle. You know a couple, 2 incomes, $365,000 combined, who toured roughly 30 apartments and could not find a single one-bedroom under $5,000 a month. 30. They have a household income that would buy a mansion in most of the country. And here they were refreshing listings at midnight like everyone else, losing units to people who paid cash before the open house even started. You've developed rituals around this. You know your rent-to-income ratio to the decimal, and you know not to say it out loud at parties because half the room will wince and the other half won't understand why $4,000 sounds like a lot. You've learned that cozy means small, vibrant neighborhood means loud, and close to transit means close to something you'll be too tired to enjoy. You've gotten good at this. You can walk into an 800-square-foot unit and clock the deal breakers in under a minute from the doorway without taking off your shoes. Nobody put that skill on your resume. San Francisco installed it for free. And somewhere in the negotiating and the touring and the losing, you stopped asking whether any of this was normal. You just started asking whether everyone else was pretending better than you. The hardest skill you'll learn here is not looking. Nobody teaches you the real curriculum of living here. You absorb it, the way you absorb an accent. Lesson 1. The geography of your own eyes. You learn which blocks to walk and which to skip, which side of the street resets your nervous system, and which one spikes it. You learn to route your life around suffering the way you'd route around construction, an inconvenience, a thing to plan for, a reason you're 4 minutes late. You'll hate that you can do this. You'll do it anyway, every single day, because the alternative is absorbing the full weight of it before your first meeting, and no one can carry that and also make the stand up. Lesson 2. The flinch and then the unflinch. The first month, every collapsed figure stops your heart. By month 6, your body has quietly filed it under environment. This is not because you got colder. It's because a human nervous system cannot sustain that much alarm indefinitely, so it does the only merciful thing it can and turns the volume down. The city takes your capacity for shock and calls it adjustment. You'll catch yourself scrolling past a man in crisis to check a lunch reservation, and the small horror you feel about that flicker, is the last honest part of you fighting to stay awake. Lesson 3. The one nobody says at parties. You're allowed to care and be exhausted. The count found nearly 8,000 people without stable housing on a single January night. For the first time, more of them were in shelter than on the street, a genuine shift, even as the number of homeless families rose 15%, and even as advocates pointed out the city had quietly changed how it counts, which makes the good news suspiciously convenient. You can hold all of that, wish it were better, donate, vote, volunteer, and still walk home too drained to make eye contact. That contradiction isn't hypocrisy, it's just what it costs to keep your heart on in a place engineered to wear it out. By now you understand the true local definition of privilege. It isn't the view or the salary, it's the ability to decide how much of the sidewalk you're going to let yourself feel today, why you stay, and why it isn't stupid. Here's where you brace for the part where I tell you to leave. I'm not going to, because that would be a lie, and you'd know it. Because some nights the fog rolls over Twin Peaks and the whole city goes soft and silver, and you stand at that same window and feel, unmistakably, that you are standing at the exact center of the thing everyone else is only reading about. You are in the room. The people building the tools that are rearranging the planet get their coffee where you get yours. You've had a conversation at a bar that would have been a keynote anywhere else. There is a real, non-delusional thrill to proximity, and anyone who tells you it doesn't exist has never felt the current in the air here at 11 p.m. on a Tuesday. And it's not just the boom, it's that you got competent. You built a life inside the hardest version of American living, and it works, barely, gloriously, on a spreadsheet held together with willpower. But it works. You have a walk you love, a burrito place that knows you, a view of the bay that still, after everything, ambushes you on a clear morning. You've made friends who are as smart and strange and stubborn as you are, all of you collectively insane enough to pay this rent to be near each other. That's not nothing. That might be the whole point. You would, if someone asked you honestly, probably do it again. Knowing the rent, knowing the sidewalk, knowing the cost, and that's the part that makes it land so hard. Not that this life is a trap you can't escape, but that it's a bargain you keep choosing, eyes open, every lease renewal. The city didn't fool you. You looked at the price tag and reached for your wallet anyway. The math that slowly does you. The thing San Francisco takes from you isn't money, it's your sense of scale. You arrived with a normal one. 180 grand was a fortune. A collapsed man on a corner was an emergency. A $4,000 rent was insane. And one by one, the city recalibrated every dial until the fortune felt tight, the emergency felt like scenery, and the insane rent felt like Tuesday. Comparison is the thief of joy, and this is the most efficient joy heist ever built, because the person you're comparing yourself to isn't a celebrity in a magazine. It's the guy 2 desks over whose equity just made him permanently, generationally free while you refreshed a rental listing. That's the quiet violence of it, not poverty. Adjacency to obscene wealth, which is a specific kind of poverty they haven't named yet. You are objectively winning the American economy and subjectively losing your own city, and both scoreboards are correct. You start doing a math no one should do. What your life would have been if you joined the right lab, taken the riskier offer, been 18 months earlier. It's a math with no bottom. You can fall into it for years, and underneath all of it, The sidewalk keeps asking the question you can't quite answer at brunch. If the richest concentration of talent and capital in human history can rise up out of these exact blocks, and it did, it's real, it's not a metaphor, then the fact that people are still dying folded over on the pavement outside those buildings isn't a resource problem, it's a choice problem. The city proved it can conjure $1 trillion. It just hasn't decided the man under the tarp is worth a fraction of it. You live at the intersection of what's possible and what's permitted, and the distance between those two things is exactly the length of your morning walk. The view, one more time. So you stay. You get good at it. You price out your life to the dollar, root around the wreckage, love the fog, resent the rent, and hold two irreconcilable cities in your head at once because the alternative is picking one and going blind to the other. Some mornings you look down from the window and you can see both San Franciscos at the same time. The one going up and the one going under. The elevator and the shaft, 40 feet and a whole universe apart. And you realize the American dream never actually promised you'd make it to the top. It just promised you'd get an unobstructed view of the top from wherever you happen to land. Congratulations! The view is incredible. That was always the deal. Welcome to San Francisco, where the future is being built at $1 trillion a floor, and the ground floor is still the sidewalk. Subscribe for more American cities that will look great in your photos and terrible in your nervous system.